Alright, CNT120, we are taking a look at our Chapter 2 lab. This first podcast, we're going to focus on the network mapping portion. The next podcast, I'll focus on the network diagram portion. So let's jump right in. We're going to use a network mapping application, Nmap, that the book talks about, and do a little bit of network mapping and learning what an application like this can give us about a network. So first thing we'll do, our lab machines might already have this installed, but if not, what we do is we go to nmap.org, this site right here. We'll go to the download section. We're going to look for the Windows section, look for the executable here, and download it to our machine. In our lab, we actually have put in our lab machines. We put it in a very specific directory. From there, we launch it and install it and accept the defaults as we do that. After that is installed, we should have a little icon on the desktop, and I will launch our Nmap program, this guy right here. It's called Nmap. That's the GUI front end for Nmap. And we're going to issue a scan of a particular site, and we're just going to scan google.com. So we'll put in google.com there, intend scan, and we'll do a scan. What this is going to do is actually make contact with google.com and try a whole battery of tests to try to learn anything it can about google.com. It's going to go through a whole bunch of TCP ports. It's going to do some pings. It's going to try to learn all kinds of things about this entity and give us that information here in various tabs. Now, while this is running, because this will take a minute, while this is running, you would use this on different pieces of equipment in your network. You'd run this against routers that you have, you'd run this against servers that you have, and try to learn as much about your devices that you have in your network, and then take that information and put it into the diagrams they talked about in the lab. Putting the IP addresses in, putting the ports in, putting the OSs in, putting the versions of software in, and so forth. So this really is a tool to go out and start kind of poking in your network at the different pieces, learning what you can so you can pull all that together in the diagrams that you're going to make, that we're going to make in our second part of our lab. I'm going to pause for just a minute while this finishes running, and then we'll come back and talk again. Okay, I waited maybe like another 30-45 seconds while this was scanning. I figured there's no sense you sitting here watching waiting. Now that it's done scanning, what I want you to do is take a look at the data that has given you. I want you to look at these different tabs, if you will. The main output is a whole battery of information. If we scroll back up to the top, we start learning things like what IP address it is. We scroll down google.com here. We start learning what ports are open on google.com. We keep going. We start learning a little bit more about here's another port that's open, etc. This gives us a bunch of DNS entries, a whole bunch of information available on this entity. Okay, scrolling down to the bottom. I also learned a little bit about how long it took to get there, the different hops that it took. I then can go through and start looking at specifics up here. These are the ports that are closed and open. I would expect 80 HTTP and 443 HTTPS to be open, and I would expect most other things to be closed, and that's exactly what it's showing you here. Most other things are closed. Here's the topology, the path it took to get there. And again, these would all be pieces of information that I could use in my network to build my map. And then here's some details about the host, the actual operating system and versions of things and so forth. Okay, so that's the first piece I want you to do, and this was our Nmap scan on our Windows machine. So what I'm going to have you do, while this is open, we're going to copy these results and save them. So what I'll have you do is come up here. I'm just going to highlight all this, and I'm going to do a Control-C, and I'm going to open a new Notepad file. So I'm going to go over here to my Start and do Notepad, launch my little Notepad file. Let me scroll it down this way here for you. Oops. Here's my little Notepad. I'll scroll it down, and I'll go right-click Paste. And I'm going to end up saving this file for submission to D2L in this lab. So there's the first part. I'll do a little quick here. I'll do a Save As. I'll go to 120 Brown. That's the folder I'm going to use. And I will do Nmap, Windows, scan kind of thing, and save that as just a plain old text file. And that'll be proof of my Windows scan that I did with Nmap. Alright, now that we did that on Windows side, I'm going to scroll back up here, and let's do the exact same thing on my Linux side. So I'm going to open my virtual machine, we go, we'll close that. I'm going to come up here to my virtual machine. I've already logged in. What I'll need to do is I'll need to install this Nmap. So I will go to Admin, I will go to my Software Manager. Up top, I'm going to do a little search for Nmap, and I'm going to look for Nmap up top here. I'll highlight this, and I already have it installed, but I will use there'll be an install button here, and I'll click install, let it run for just a minute, install it on my machine. Now I have that utility available to me to use on my Linux VM. So then I'll come in here after that's installed, hit the menu, go to Internet, and there is my Nmap, and I'll do the Nmap as root. That's like admin privileges. So I will plug in my password now, CNT class, and there is my Nmap that looks almost identical to what I did in Windows. And this time I'm going to do a scan of hack.edu. So I will do hack.edu, I'll do a scan, and again I'm going to let this run for a minute, and I'll look at the results I get from the scan here on Linux of hack.edu. Again, while this is going on, I'm just going to pause so you're not sitting here waiting for this to occur. When it's done, I'll come back again. Alright, and our Linux VM Nmap scan just completed. So again, we're going to take a second, scroll back up, look at our main tab here, showing us the IP address we learned about Nmap. Or I should say about hack.edu, the IP address we learned about hack.edu. Scrolling down through, we'll see it's trying a number of different things. We start finding out different ports it has tried and it's open. Here's port 80 that's open, 443 it's open, and we're seeing a little bit about Amazon. Yep, hack.edu is Amazon Web Services. That's where the hack.edu website is. And we even see a little bit about Apache. That is a Linux-based web server. Very, very common web server. Coming down through, learning a little bit more about operating system, so forth. There's the traceroute too. So there's a great big summary of what it has learned. And again, we'll come through and try, hey, here's 2 ports that it has learned that's open on hack.edu. 80 and 443 is what we would expect. Here's the topology, the path it took to get there, a couple hops away. Here's some details about the host. We see a little bit of Linux up there, so we know Amazon Web Services is using some derivation of Linux. Okay, so there is the scan results of Nmap on our Linux VM. So that's the first thing I had you do. Now, on this one, I'm going to have you run Nmap again, but I'm going to do it in a command line fashion. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this result right here, or this command right here. We'll copy that. I can close Nmap if I want to. I'm going to open a terminal prompt down here, and I'm going to do sudo. That's the admin command, if you will, super user do. I'm going to paste that in. I will need to plug my password in, CNT class, and I'm going to let this scan run again from my command prompt, showing you that some of these commands that we use, some of these GUIs that we use, if you will, applications we use, are available through command line as well, especially on Linux machines. I'm going to let this run, and when I'm done, I'm going to come back and I'm going to copy my results out of the command prompt into my text file. So again, I'll pause while this is running. I'll come back and show you the results and the copying. Okay, my Linux command line Nmap just finished. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll up here and I'll see this is almost like that first tab of my Nmap that I did there. There's the command I ran. Here's the checking of hack.edu coming down through. Here's the IP it learned. Here's the ports that it learned. So this is kind of like it's not near as fancy looking as the other one, the GUI version, if you will, but all the results are here, including here's the different ports and things that is tried. Coming down through, down here at the bottom, there's the trace route results. So all the information is there, just maybe not as pretty as we were used to in the other one. What I'm going to do now, though, is I'm going to copy this guy. I'm going to scroll down and highlight all that. I'll do edit copy, and I'm going to open under my accessories my text editor here, and I'm going to paste the results in, and I'm going to do a file save as, and I can save it to my desktop. Makes life a little bit easier. And I'll do Linux Nmap scan or something like that. And I'll put a .txt on the end of this guy. That way it is viewable or openable with a text editor. So I'll close those. There is my text file. I open that guy up. There is all my text. And I will save that for submission to D2L. So there is using Nmap, and we did it on Windows. We saw it on Windows and used the GUI there. We even saw it on Linux with the GUI, and we even did it through command line. Getting to realize there's various forms of this, and they're all going to help me get information I need about the entities in my network. That is data I need to do the next part of diagramming my network. This is part 1. When I come back in the next podcast, we'll jump into part 2.